Okay, folks, welcome back, and I am going to take you through what I'd like to call the First Amendment's chain of rights. Now, this idea came to me when I was thinking about recent attacks on various First Amendment rights that I feel have been pushed by the left of late. And when I got to thinking about the First Amendment, I came to realize that what I used to think was a bunch of disjointed rights protected by the First Amendment was actually a sequence of rights, a chain of rights, so to speak. So let's go through that by first looking at the First Amendment itself. First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, when I was in high school and I was learning about the First Amendment, I looked at that and I was like, well, that seems like kind of a mishmash. But it's actually not. There are 6 freedoms listed in the First Amendment, and they all kind of segue one into the other. The first of those 6 freedoms is the freedom to believe, where it says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Next, you go into freedom to express, and that's the portion about free exercise of religion. Then you've got freedom to communicate, which is freedom of speech. Freedom to disseminate follows from that, that's freedom of the press. Freedom to discuss involves peaceable assembly. And then last but not least, freedom to protest is the right of the people to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And all of these things follow one on top of the other. So if we start with freedom to believe, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. What does that mean? Well, it's generally taken to mean that government cannot either establish an official religion, it can't prefer one religion over another, and it can't prefer religion to non-religion or non-religion to religion. So that's generally what the first portion of the First Amendment is taken to mean. But more importantly, it means government can't dictate what a religion teaches. Every religion has its own teachings about what is right and what is wrong, and government has no authority to contradict these teachings. This applies equally to secular philosophies. So, altogether, it means there are beliefs that are taught by religions that these religions are, the adherents of these religions are expected to follow and are expected to believe themselves. And so by saying government cannot interfere in what these religions teach or try to establish a religion of its own, it's basically saying that people's beliefs are up to them. Government cannot control what people believe. Whether the source, and this holds true whether the source of these beliefs is religious or secular. So if you get your beliefs from, ancient Greek philosophers or something like that, fine. If you get your beliefs from observations of nature, fine. If you get your beliefs from religion, fine. Government can't tell you what to believe. Now, once you believe something, then you need the ability to express what you believe. And this is where the free exercise clause comes in. Now, free exercise of religion isn't just the freedom to worship. It's not just talking about, you're able to go into a church and practice, how it is you commune with God, or how it is that you practice that worship aspect of your religion. But it's the freedom to act according to your beliefs, even if those actions put you at odds with society at large. So some examples of free exercise. Maybe there's particular clothing you have to wear, like the Muslim headscarf, like a Jewish yarmulke, various styles of dress. Maybe it's the way you wear your hair. Like there's the Sikhs who have to have the beard. Maybe they have their ceremonial sword. There's various things that are attached to how you present yourself outwardly that apply to your religious faith. So that's free exercise. There's also prayer at specified times. You're supposed to be able to pray at the times that your God requires. Uh, Abstaining from work on particular days. There are a lot of observant Jews who respect the Sabbath. And there are even observant Christians. I used to work with a guy who absolutely, bar none, would not work on Sunday, even if they'd brought him in from out of town to do things in an emergency basis, took Sundays off, bar none. Raising and educating one's children consistently with one's faith and to be members of that faith. That means the government can't tell you that you cannot raise your children in the same faith as yourself or have your children adhere to the same beliefs and practices that you yourself are obligated to have them adhere to as part of your faith. And also conscientious objection from activities contrary to one's faith. If you are a conscientious objector to war, for example, then the government has to make accommodation for you. So these are all examples of free exercise, and free exercise is the ability to express your beliefs in your life and in your children's lives. So first you believe. First, you have a certain set of beliefs that you get from sources that government cannot touch. And then you get to practice your beliefs in your life. And government can't interfere with that either. Now, the next freedom is the freedom to communicate, or freedom of speech. Beyond having beliefs and expressing those beliefs in your own life, there may also come the need to articulate those beliefs to others. Now, we might do this to ensure that we ourselves understand what it is that we ourselves believe. Maybe there are holes in what we believe. Maybe we need to fix our thinking somehow. Whatever it takes for us, whatever kind of, communication it takes, whether to our, just talking to ourselves or talking to other people who understand matters better, until we're secure in our beliefs, we can do that. And if we're sure in our beliefs, then we can even articulate those beliefs for the purpose of swaying others to adopt our beliefs. Now, except in the most extreme circumstances, which are circumstances like putting lives in immediate jeopardy, say shouting fire in a crowded theater and, possibly causing death that way, neither the content nor the implications of a belief warrant forbidding that belief from being spoken. So, the bottom line is, government cannot forbid you from communicating what you believe to others. You believe it, you live it out in your own life, and now you can actually share those beliefs. So that's all in a chain there. Next is freedom of the press, or the freedom to disseminate information. People tend to think that the press means just the news media. But it's actually a literal reference to the printing press, which in 1789 was the primary technology by which you could spread your ideas out over a wider audience. You basically had this printing press, and I think this should be just kind of common sense, but you had the printing press back then, and you created leaflets, you created newspapers, you created, whatever kinds of letters or manuscripts necessary to contain your ideas and get them out in front of a wider audience. Any method by which an idea can be recorded and transmitted can be considered the press. Modern versions would include newspapers, magazines, books, audio recordings, video recordings, emails, ebooks, blogs, etc. Basically any kind of transmission medium would be considered the press. So this portion of the First Amendment basically means that you can not only communicate your beliefs by speaking them, like person-to-person communication, but you can also record them in a more static format so that your beliefs can be distributed far and wide to people who are not immediately around you. So government cannot stop you from disseminating your ideas. Next up is the freedom to discuss, and this deals with peaceable assembly. Whatever your beliefs are, translating those beliefs into public policy often requires public effort because nobody in and of themselves has all of the knowledge to understand how beliefs put into policy might affect society as a whole. You might think you understand society's problems and how to fix them, but you run up against people with more experience, and maybe you'll get a firmer grasp on reality as far as these problems and their solutions go. So, the First Amendment protects the right of people to come together in public in whatever forum, could be personal, could be virtual, could be over the internet, could be in a town hall, to compare notes on their beliefs and manufacture a public policy that they think would be suitable for all persons. So, in guaranteeing this right of peaceable assembly, the First Amendment says government can't stop you from taking your beliefs to other people and discussing those beliefs all together for the sake of developing public policy. And then last but not least, you've got the freedom to protest, and this is the right of the people to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This right is connected with an "and" in the First Amendment to the previous right, making them intimately connected. You can basically gather together and as a mass go and put your demands before the government. See, once you've got a group of people who have all agreed this is how society should be run, this is how public policy should be changed, the next logical step is to take that policy and bring it before the government, asking them to implement it. And per this portion of the First Amendment, the government has to provide peaceful avenues where the people can bring their desire for change in public policy before the government. So government cannot forbid the people from protesting the status quo, because the problem with the status quo is why you would formulate a public policy change in the first place. So let's take a look at the chain of rights. First, you've got the freedom to believe, whether your beliefs come from a church, from ancient scriptures, maybe it's from ancient philosophers, or maybe it's your own ideas. Maybe these are just your wild ideas about how society should be run. You have the freedom to believe that. Next, you have the freedom to express those beliefs in your own life. Dressing the way you want, living the way you want, raising your children the way you want. You have the right to do that. Next comes the freedom to communicate. You can share your beliefs with other people, and in the freedom to disseminate, you can share them not just over social media, which is kind of more of a cross between speech and writing, but also by putting your ideas into more static forms, like a book or a newspaper or a podcast or even a video like this one. Next, once you've got your ideas out there, people can get together, yourself included hopefully, and discuss your ideas. Try to formulate a public policy that would work for everyone. And once you've got that policy, you have the freedom to protest the status quo, bring your policy before the council members, or even hold an open-air protest in the streets. These are all examples those are both examples of peaceful protests that are First Amendment protected. So, we've got this chain of rights, one thing leading to the other in progression in the First Amendment. And one thing that I've noticed is how every link in this chain is now under attack, especially since the Capitol riots. For example, protest. Although the January 6th Capitol riot was clearly not First Amendment protected, even protesters who did not storm the Capitol are being called terrorists. Have you noticed that? They're basically applying the terrorist label to everyone who was in D.C. on January 6th, whether or not they participated in storming the Capitol. Even if they were, congresspeople, even if they were public officials themselves who never called for any kind of violent attack on the Capitol, but instead just wanted a peaceful protest and encouraged nothing but that. Those people are even being called terrorists. So the protest link in the chain is under attack. Discussion. Democrats are calling for the expulsion of congresspersons who just wanted a deeper look into 2020's election integrity. I mean, my goodness, what is the point of having congresspeople if they are not going to argue the perspectives of the people in Congress? If they are not going to bring these beliefs of the people before Congress and discuss them within Congress's halls. Isn't that what Congress is for? That's what Congress is for. And yet Democrats are calling for the expulsion of congresspersons who wanted to discuss the ideas that were held by the protesters. Dissemination and communication. Social media outlets have clamped down on anyone who would spread the idea that the 2020 election was in any way problematic. Do I know whether there was election fraud or not? I do not. I don't. I'm not claiming there was. I'm not claiming there wasn't. But you should at least be able to discuss that online. You should at least be able, if you have an idea that this was something that happened, then you should be able to broadcast that to people. You should be able to communicate what it is you believe about the election, the state of our election integrity. Expression. National Guard troops assigned to Biden's inauguration were subjected to extra vetting to ensure that their behavior expresses sympathy with the new administration. So maybe you, as a consequence of your beliefs, have been active in Republican causes as a National Guard member, or maybe you've stood up for gun rights, or maybe you've stood up for other rights, maybe you've expressed your beliefs online. You could be subject to exclusion from this National Guard assignment if you were not towing the line in full. Yeah. And then last but not least, believing. Even politicians who have stated that Joe Biden is indeed president and that they will work with him are roughed up by the media if they don't also profess that Biden's election was wholly legitimate. Just look at the recent conversation between George Stephanopoulos and Rand Paul. Rand Paul, at this point, if I understand him correctly, is agnostic about whether or not there was election fraud. He just wants more transparency. He believes that the process as it stands is not transparent enough. And just for believing that, he's getting raked over the coals by George Stephanopoulos, who wants a declaration of faith that the election was sound, that there was nothing wrong with the election. And you see it online, in all the social media stuff, how Republicans should be subjected to re-education until they accept that the election was legitimate. It's all complete nonsense, but it's an attack on the very first link in the chain, which is the freedom to believe what it is that you believe, from whatever sources you get that information from. So the First Amendment is under attack. Every part of the First Amendment is under attack. And over the next 4 years, hopefully it's only going to be 2 of complete Democrat rule, but over the next 4 years that Biden or Harris is going to be in power, we need to be vigilant and make sure that we sustain every single one of our First Amendment rights, because every one of those rights is under attack. I'm Mike Partika. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please do subscribe so you can get notified on the next videos, and I will talk to you later.